Okay, so get this. We're diving into some seriously strange stuff, like lights in the sky, mysterious encounters, and people who swear they've been taken to who knows where.
Sounds intriguing.
Right. And you're going to love this one. It's a case that'll make you scratch your head and say, what in the world is going on?
It's the Manhattan alien abduction.
Oh, yeah, the Linda Napolitano case. That one's been making the rounds again.
Has it ever? A new Netflix documentary series dropped late last year, 3 whole episodes, and they've kind of stirred up a hornet's nest, you could say.
I've heard there's some legal stuff brewing, too.
Lawsuits, drama, the whole 9 yards. So that's what we're going to untangle today. We'll dig into the facts, the players, and why this story is still so hot 35 years later.
You know, it's interesting what keeps these stories alive. Is it our need to believe in something bigger than ourselves? Or maybe it's the thrill of trying to prove the impossible. Well, let's rewind back to November 30th, 1989. We're in Manhattan. Linda Napolitano is in her 12th floor apartment. And suddenly she claims she's zapped by a blue light. Next thing she knows, she's on a reddish-orange spacecraft. Like, picture a UFO swooping down and snatching someone from their apartment, right out of the city.
It's like something out of a movie.
Totally, and there's more. Apparently, over 20 people say they saw it happen, including, get this, the bodyguards of a world leader. They never said who, though. Talk about adding to the mystery, right?
Definitely raises some eyebrows.
Well, wait, there's more weirdness. Linda says the alien who abducted her was named Dan, and Dan, he asked to see her toes.
Dan.
Yeah.
Asked to see her toes.
Yep, you heard that right. It's like, what kind of alien request is that?
That's a detail that always stuck with me. It's so specific.
Yeah.
So bizarre. If you were making up a story, why would you invent that? It makes you wonder if maybe it's a real memory, even if it sounds completely out there.
Yeah, it makes you think. And here's another twist. 13 years before this whole abduction thing, Linda woke up with a nosebleed, went to the doctor, and the doctor supposedly found evidence of something having been in her nose, but nothing was there. Makes you wonder, was this another encounter, like the start of something bigger?
It's definitely a detail that makes you pause.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a one-off? Or could it be connected to what happened later? A prior encounter would add a whole other layer to this.
And who knows if Linda's story would have gotten much attention if it hadn't been for this guy named Bud Hopkins. He was a major figure in UFO research, and he really championed Linda's case.
But Hopkins, he's a legend in those circles.
He even wrote a book about it, Witness, the true story of the Brooklyn Bridge abduction, which, I mean, obviously brought the case to a much wider audience.
Hopkins was really respected in the UFO community, and that book really gave Linda's story some weight. Like it legitimized it in a way.
And that kind of brings us to the Netflix documentary. They tried to present both sides, Linda and her supporters, and the skeptics who questioned her claims. But here's where things get really interesting. Linda and Hopkins' estate, they're suing Netflix for defamation.
Whoa, hold on. They're suing Netflix.
Yeah, they claim the documentary made Linda look like a liar, like she fabricated the whole thing.
That adds a whole other layer to this whole thing. So they're saying Netflix basically exploited their story, used it for entertainment without really caring about the truth.
Exactly. And get this. The documentary features Carol Rainey, Hopkins' ex-wife. She initially believed Linda, but later changed her mind. And Linda's particularly upset about Rainey's involvement.
So there's like a personal element to this too.
It seems like Linda feels betrayed by Netflix. Like they went back on their word about Rainey's role. And those dramatic reenactments in the documentary, they probably didn't help either.
Yeah, those could be a bit much sometimes. They can make things seem more sensationalized.
Right. And one review even called the documentary a litigation of a decades-old beef. It's clear there are some strong feelings here. And a lot of conflicting stories.
It really makes you think about how stories get told and how things can get complicated when different perspectives clash, especially when it's all playing out in the public eye.
Absolutely. So we've got a story about an alleged alien abduction, a famous UFO researcher who championed the case, a controversial documentary, and now a lawsuit. Where do we even go from here?
Well, I think it's time to delve a little deeper. Let's explore why this story still has such a hold on us after all this time. What is it about these kinds of stories that keeps people talking, debating, and even taking legal action?
Let's do it. Yeah, it's a real mess, isn't it? But even with all the legal stuff going on, the documentary has kind of put this whole alien abduction thing back in the spotlight.
It's like the documentary itself became part of the mystery.
Right, like we're falling deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. But okay, let's zoom out for a sec. Why does this story, the Manhattan alien abductions, still have this hold on us after all these years? What is it about these stories that keeps people talking and arguing and even suing each other?
Hmm. Well, I think it taps into something really human, you know, like that fascination with the unknown. The idea that we might not be alone in the universe has always captivated people.
It's that feeling you get when you look up at the stars, right?
Exactly. All wonder, maybe a little bit of fear.
Like, it makes you question everything you thought you knew.
Right. These stories challenge our understanding of reality. They make us confront the limits of what we know.
And maybe they also tap into our desire for meaning, like we're searching for something bigger than ourselves, some answer to the question of why we're here.
I think there's something to that. It's like we want to believe we're not just random specks in a vast, indifferent cosmos.
Right, and there's also the mystery of it all. The Manhattan alien abduction, it's got multiple witnesses, this mention of a world leader, and then those strange details in Linda's story. It's like a puzzle that people keep trying to solve.
That's a captivating puzzle for sure.
Oh, and don't forget the drama, the lawsuit, the conflicting stories, all the accusations. It's all pretty compelling.
It's messy, but it's definitely compelling.
Like a train wreck. You know, you shouldn't look, but you can't help yourself.
Maybe. But it also shows how powerful stories can be. They shape our beliefs, influence our opinions, and they can even have real-world consequences.
Speaking of consequences, that lawsuit against Netflix, it brings up some serious ethical questions about making documentaries. Like, how do you tell a story that's engaging without exploiting people? How do you make sure you're being fair and honest when the truth is so slippery?
It's a tough balancing act, but especially with a subject like alien abduction. I think filmmakers have a responsibility to be upfront about their intentions, to respect everyone's perspective, and to avoid sensationalizing things just for entertainment.
It's a good reminder that we all need to be critical thinkers, especially when we're consuming media. We should question what we see and hear, and try to understand the motivations of the people telling the story. Especially in this age of social media and viral content, it's easy to get caught up in the hype and lose sight of accuracy and balance.
Absolutely. This case really shows how even documentaries, which we usually think of as objective and truth-seeking, can be influenced by bias, hidden agendas, the desire for a good story, even if it might hurt someone.
So it sounds like we should approach all information with a healthy dose of skepticism and critical thinking, even if it's coming from a source we generally trust.
I think that's wise.
Especially with something as extraordinary as alien abduction. We need to weigh the evidence, consider different viewpoints, and be open to the idea that the truth might be more complicated than any single story can capture.
It highlights how belief and skepticism can get tangled up, and how our desire for answers can sometimes lead us down a path of uncertainty.
It's true. We may never know for sure what happened to Linda Napolitano.
That's a good possibility.
But the search for that answer, the exploration of these events, that's a journey worth taking.
It is.
So what do you think? Is it possible to prove something like alien abduction? What would convince you, a self-proclaimed skeptic, that something like the Manhattan alien abduction actually happened?
That's the big questions on it. I think for me it comes down to evidence. Tangible, verifiable proof.
Like what? Alien fingerprints? A spaceship blueprint?
Ideally something more concrete than that. But even physical evidence can be interpreted in different ways. Ultimately, it would have to be a lot of evidence, coming from different sources,
Yeah.
all pointing to the same conclusion. And even then, there's always room for doubt.
I guess that's the nature of the unknown. It's always just out of reach.
But that's what keeps us curious.
Yeah.
It drives our need to search, to question, and to explore.
And that's probably why stories like the Manhattan alien abduction keep fascinating us.
They remind us that there are still things we don't understand, mysteries that challenge us and make us question reality itself.
So to our listeners out there, we've gone deep into this bizarre story, the claims, the controversy, the lawsuit. But here's something to think about. What if you witnessed something truly strange, something you couldn't explain? How would you convince others? What kind of evidence would it take to prove the impossible?
That's a question that goes way beyond just alien abductions. It's about any extraordinary claim, anything that challenges what we think is normal or even possible.
You're right. It makes you think about that burden of proof. How much evidence is enough? And who gets to decide what's believable and what's not?
Well, we usually rely on things like eyewitness accounts, physical evidence, expert opinions, but even those can be unreliable, subjective, or even manipulated.
Yeah, it's tricky.
It often comes down to trust, like evaluating how credible the source is, and being open to the possibility of other explanations.
But sometimes it feels like the most convincing evidence is just the person telling the story, their belief in their own experience, even if it doesn't make sense or seem explainable.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it? We want proof, we want certainty. But sometimes the most profound truths are found in those subjective, personal, unexplainable realms.
This deep dive has definitely given us more questions than answers. But maybe that's the whole point. It's not about finding a definitive conclusion. It's about expanding our perspectives, questioning our assumptions, and acknowledging that there's still so much we don't know.
And who knows? Maybe someday we'll have the technology or the understanding to solve these mysteries. But until then, we have to grapple with the possibilities, explore those fringes of knowledge, and keep asking those big questions about the universe and our place in it.
So to our listeners, keep looking up, keep questioning, keep wondering, because even when we're faced with uncertainty, it's that pursuit of truth, that exploration of the unknown. That's what makes us human.
And it's what makes these deep dives so fascinating. Till next time, keep exploring.